Goeienaand. Dis Dinsdag aand. Dit is 7 uur. Daar's net een plek wat ons is. Daar's een plek wat jy moet wees. Dis hier saam met ons op 4 Anglers Live op Bank Anglers se Facebook bladsy en 4 Anglers se YouTube kanaal. Welcome to everybody. Thank you very much to our main sponsors, Orion Audiovisual and Gijspitzer Motors. Now, today I have an old friend that is, I think, quite a common face on this program. Not because I like him so much, but because he knows so much. Gilbert, Foxcroft, baie welkom hier by ons vanaand.
Baie dankie Werner, dis 'n voorreg, dankie man.
Dankie dat jy weer saam met ons kuier en uit die aard van die saak, as Gilbert hier is, praat ons net een ding en dit is klein karpies, né?
Nee, nie altyd nie. Ons kan daar 'n bietjie soutwater op praat. Ek het daar so bietjie 'n paar kabeljoutjies al gevang.
So 'n paar goedjies gevang. But his absolute field of expertise is big carp fishing, specimen, etc. Okay, so let's just have a look at what we are doing tonight. So we are giving away a couple of things. We're starting with some shirts and buffs and so forth, Stuyvesant tight lines. So ons gaan so 'n bietjie, jy moet seker maak jy het hierdie tydskrif by jou want die vraag kom hier uit 'n bietjie later. Vanaand doen ons dit bietjie anders, interessant. Ons hardloop die kompetisies op beide die YouTube kanaal sowel as die Facebook. So ons gee 2 van hierdie weg, een op die een kant, een op die ander kant en ons het 2 ander hampertjies wat ons weggee, ook een op elke kant. Gilbert, you are going to give away a little present or two. So there's a couple of ready-made rigs plus the ones that you just made.
Yes.
With your own 2 hands just now while we were preparing.
Correct. So now the viewer that is the lucky person to win this, don't go and fish with it. Actually use it as a sample because this is exactly what we were using in a number of programs, in a number of posts all over the show. It's been giving us extreme results. So, you know, I'm going to be giving away a couple of the ready-made quarter rigs and of course the ones that I've just built.
Okay, maar ons gaan nou vir julle presies wys hoekom is hulle so suksesvol, hoe lyk hulle, hoe moet hulle werk. So dis aan daai kant, dan het ons ook 'n paar Christen ready-made rigs. So baie dankie vir Sensation wat vir ons hierdie gee, Kingfisher wat vir ons daai gee en 'n paar Hayabusa hoeke wat ons gaan weggee. So daar's 2 specimen related rigs hampertjies wat ons weggee. Then our members prize for tonight is that's actually also quite a nice product, the bullseye. We've done a review on the bullseye. This is the 10-foot. We're giving that away, compliments of Kingfisher. And that's a member's prize. So if you have renewed your membership in the first 10 days, 11 up to this afternoon, the first 11 days of January, your name is in the wheel. I see that wheel is chock-a-block full. Okay, so that's what we're giving away. What are we talking about? We're going to talk about a couple of things. Firstly, we're going to talk about, I call it the golden thread. Gilbert called it best practices, success stories, in terms of what has been catching big fish in the last couple of years. Then I'm gonna tap his brain a bit to talk about rising waters and how do we deal with rising waters in terms of rigs, bait, ground bait, etc. And then a very interesting topic, and you guys are welcome to put some questions forward as well. We're going to talk syndicate waters, and we've seen syndicate waters growing in South Africa, and we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to have a couple of other interesting things, and we're going to answer some more questions. So we've dedicated this tonight's program to that and giving away. So Gilbert, kom ons gesels 'n bietjie sukses. The past 4 years, you've been heavily involved in, I think your mindset has actually shifted a bit. You've been involved with with big carp fishing for many, many moons.
Yeah.
But the last 4 years, there's been a shift. So what has happened, and what is this golden thread that we're talking about?
Let's just go back a little while. I started doing specimen carp angling, but exclusively. I didn't do anything else. Did a bit of bass fishing, monster carp fishing. And we revolutionized a couple of things in South Africa. I mean, we were instrumental. And if I say we, it is the original group of guys that started this was Graham de Waveren, Glenn, Mark Schmidt. It's all guys that are members at Aqua Paradiso, incidentally, after all those years. Simon Cardi, who's now in Portugal. We started fishing Donaldson Dam, mainly the top dam. There was no syndicate or anything of that sort. And we exclusively only focused on boilie fishing. No particles or anything. We literally only fish boilies because we wanted to catch those bigger fish.
Did you also, now most of the specimen guys knows the history of boilies and where does it come from and why it's a boilie. But have you at all fished with boiled potatoes in the beginning years, or was that like European type of?
That was post that. I mean, I started fishing really hard for carp in 1992.
Oh, okay, so that was when there was already boilies.
That's it, yes.
There was a paste cooked.
And the guy that actually introduced me to that was an Englishman by the name of Peter Bryant. Now, if you go back into history and you go to Raisbury in the UK, where the world-renowned fish Mary was a resident and was caught a number of times, there is a swim on that lake named after Peter Bryant because he used to be the bailiff of Raisbury in the good old golden days.
Okay.
So there is a swim called Bryant's Point. So you'll find it. Then I met up with Andries Maria and Skalk and those guys, and they started doing promoting the competitive carp angling.
And that was just after John Dearden started writing a lot about specimen fishing.
Yes, and then the FIPS thing came about, and SAFBAF affiliated, and the rest is history. Now, I was of the first guys that participated in the first essays that was ever held in South Africa for specimen carp angling. We ended up, I represented South Africa 12 times. We won the World Championships 5 times. And I literally hang up my boots on competitive carp angling in 2019 when we won it for the 5th time. But in 2018, literally 2016 was the shift. I stopped competitive fishing, and I started focusing on the 2 boys and taking them fishing and spending more time doing what I love, and that is this sort of thing. Chasing
bigger fish.
Well, chasing bigger fish, and also you must take into consideration, and we spoke about it earlier on. I was in the printing industry for many years, so lots of leave was not on the cards. Yeah. So you literally had your 15 days leave, and you've got to, there's a forced close down in December. So I literally only had weekends to fish. So I didn't have the luxury of going to fish lakes like Klipkopje and I did Klasiri years ago.
You have to do the 4-day session.
So I've got to do those weekends or long weekend sessions. And that's what I was restricted to. So I focused my attention on dams close by. And that's how we got onto Aqua Paradiso. And so I fished local waters mainly. And in 2018, when I started working for the Kingfisher, I was invited to participate in the Hier gaan ons alweer TV shoots. So that gave me that it's not a competitive situation, but you are under extreme pressure because you need to perform.
It's almost competitive.
It's almost competitive because you literally, and people think that, we spend weeks feeding a water and sorting. You don't have that luxury. I mean, you've now been on 3 where you've actually literally experienced it. The 2018 was at Inanda Dam. Now that was pre the loops and booms era and before spinner rigs really became very popular. And we used a rig called the D rig. Sorry, I'm lying. We used a KD rig because a D rig was a popular rig.
And then the KD came.
But the KD came and just changed things around because a lot of fish, or shall I say, 95% of the fish that we've had in the last 4 years on the Hier gaan ons alweer was caught on a critically balanced bottom bait.
What is a critically balanced bottom bait?
Well, it literally is a bait where if I put that hook on my hand, the hook lies flat and the bait sits up straight. So what the critically balanced bait does is it neutralizes the weight of the hook. So the minute the fish sucks, the very first thing after the hook bait that enters his mouth is the hook.
Okay, what makes it critically balanced? Why does it?
So you can do that with a wide variety of things. You can use wafters, which is a dedicated bait that is, you can call neutral buoyant. But because we fish on the Hier gaan ons alweer and Supercast is a main sponsor of that program, we use baits mainly that comes from them.
Range.
That is in that range.
But it's also the baits that work.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Tiger nuts is probably one of the most successful baits worldwide, although it is banned on certain waters because the amount of tiger nuts people put in, it's not necessarily good for the fish. It is nutritious up to a point, but it hasn't got any other
so when it comes
benefits.
in at volumes, it's a problem.
Yes.
Okay, so what is...
So basically what I've done, I'm going to just quickly deconstruct this so that the viewers can see. I'm going to just take this stopper out. Just remove the stopper. Take the bait off. It literally is a piece of high density foam of approximately 1 centimeter long with a little hole that I've drilled out into the tiger nut, and I've just basically plugged it. So now this bait has got 2 benefits. If I put it in a glass of water, it's going to go down and it's going to slowly come up to the surface. So it's absolutely perfectly balanced. But secondly, that little orange piece of foam, and that is where my trick came in. I just after the Hier gaan ons alweer in 2018, where we used double tiger nuts with a piece of cork inside to balance the bait.
In between the two or inside?
Inside. So I drilled out the one and I drilled out the other one and I plugged them nicely to sit absolutely perfectly. So in the next Bank Angler magazine, that article will come out. So the long and short is, after that, I felt, we've got to do something a little bit different. We've been using in the competitive carp angling very, very small baits with a piece of foam in. So you use 2 pieces of maize or a piece of a small tiger nut with a red foam at a place like Bloemhof Dam. And I thought, you know what, I've got to figure out something. And I had to do a clinic before the Winter Bonanza in 2018. And I took a couple of tiger nuts, drilled them out, put a white piece of foam because white is always a good color, yellow, red, orange. So I prepared a couple of tiger nuts. So now I've got 4 rods and I take one of each color and I go drop it all in the same spot, but I didn't use any flavor because I didn't want the flavor to be the catalyst for messing up my plan. I then got a bottle of Thalmatin, which is the same as Betalin, which is the same as Loki's Sunshine, just the sweetener. So I dipped the baits in that, and I dropped it in the same general area with the same amount of feed spread around, and a mousetrap. And within an hour, I got a take on the orange. So I put it out again. And I got another take on the orange, but nothing on the other rods. So then I took the orange one and I swapped it with the second to right, which was red, moved it around, got another take on the orange. So now I'm scratching my head. I then took the white out, replaced it with the orange, and got a take on that as well. Then I took the other ones out and I made them all orange, and they all went. So I had a fish on, Robert Kotze had a fish on, Thomas de Wet had a fish on, and my youngster, Neil. So I thought, shit, this must be a fluke. Then I played around with purple. And again, I got a take, but I never got a take on any of the other colors. The following weekend was the winter bonanza. So I ended up in the river section around the corner at Rurikoppies Hengeloord. That I arrived late. By the time I arrived at about 11:45 the night, the competition already started at 6 o'clock. And I know that there was guys that already had fish of 12 kilograms and 10 kilograms. And it was only the biggest fish that won the competition. But during as the sun started rising on that morning, the Saturday morning, I got the first fish. And then it just carried on, and we got double ups and triple ups and 4 fish on. And when the sun set that evening, my 4 rods produced 52 runs. The guy that was fishing on my left-hand side didn't get a single take. I eventually went and offered him a rig, and he tried it out, but they were feeding incorrectly. They didn't have the coarse salt in the mix that we've been doing for the past 4 years. And I think the rig itself, the way that we fished it, the way that we spread the bait very wide and not concentrated on a single spot, so made the difference.
Let's just concentrate on that a bit. So in terms of the golden thread, the first thing that you had was critically balanced baits. The second thing was the color orange.
Yes.
The third thing was the rigs. Now, so which were the rigs that performed the best over the last 4 years?
Right. It started off with the KD rig. Then it went to the fluorocarbon D rig. And then Corda launched the loops and booms. And the loops and booms just, it just ticked all the boxes. Number one, you've got an almost KD rig effect. You've got a stiff boom section. And very important, you've got a flexible point that is...
Why is the flexible point important?
Number one, the flexible point is only important if you put a piece of putty on.
Okay, so you have the anchor.
Because that's the anchor. If I lift that rig up, immediately the hook hangs forward. So it makes the hook point heavy. Okay. So the minute a fish sucks it in, and if you think about the mechanics of how a fish would suck something in, he would suck it in, and that for that brief millisecond, there's no pressure of water coming in. There's got to be neutrality. He's got to press his tongue against his palate because he needs to taste what he's just inhaled. And that is when the tongue and the palate forces the hook down behind the bone on the front lip. And you've seen the hook holds. I mean, you've experienced it. You can play that fish for a week long. I mean, that fish that you had last year on the Hirgan on Salvi, and the year before last year.
The margin ones.
I mean, you pulled that fish so hard and I mean, you didn't have a choice. I mean, you literally pulled that whole knotweed bush out of proportion to land the fish. Now, if you had any other type of bait presentation, type of rig, your hair was too long or whatever, you would have just had them, you would have lost that fish.
Okay, so the loops and booms was, can I almost say categorically, the best performing rig that you had over the last.
I went and pulled the stats. In the 2 Hirganon Salveers that we did at Rodekoppies Dam, we had 174 runs and we landed 174 fish. So I would not use anything else. If I go to Rodekoppies Dam, the first rig that goes out is that.
Okay, now,
although there's been a change, because after the loops and booms, the spinner rig got its existence, and it started becoming extremely popular for the simple reason, now you've got a rig that you can fish a pop-up, a wafter, a critically balanced bottom bait, a snowman rig, and a bottom bait.
Yeah.
And it also comes as a ready-made rig.
Okay, so principally, and I think, and it's not about the product, but it's about the principle of what it does.
Yes.
So you can make it yourself as well.
Yes.
It's easy to buy it off the shelf, but you can make a loop and boom.
That's pretty much why I keep on saying to people that if you are cash strapped, buy yourself one packet of the loops and booms.
Yeah.
And go and deconstruct one and work out how. But then again, I've made it even more easier, because on YouTube, on your platform and on the Carp Master platform, we've actually, during 2020's hard lockdown, I did 50 videos that actually explains that all, and it shows you how to build your own loops and booms, which is so easy. And I still can't understand how people can get it wrong, because you guys must understand that the length of your hair is critical, absolutely critical.
You're talking about length of hair, but you've got no hair.
The hair on the hook. So if I put this bait on, and I'm going to, so the first thing, you'll notice that the hair is too short. Now I make my hairs always, and if I take my measuring tool, I've got one of these very smart little measuring tools. If I hook this on, my hair is exactly to the bend of the hook. So if we put it there, there's the bend of the hook. It's 16 millimeters from the bend of the hook.
Okay.
Right? So I can now go and use a variety of bait sizes, because tiger nuts are not all equal in size. So then I use the extender stoppers. Now the extender stoppers will give me that exact perfect.
Okay, so an extender stopper is a stopper that's got a longer.
Yeah, it's literally the shape of a V.
Yeah, it's a longer seat, and it goes into the.
Goes right into the center there.
So if you've got a longer tiger nut, you can use that. If you've got a shorter one, you use a normal.
Correct. Now the whole trick is not to have your bait too far from the hook. So you want that bait to touch the bend of the hook, or slightly shorter, but not longer, not for this rig. Because the way that it presents itself, that anchors it, you lift, you suck it in, and it actually already targets the bottom lip.
Okay.
And that is exactly what the spinner rig does. Here is
same principle.
Same principle. If that was a tiger nut, the same would happen. The hook always hangs forward, and on the pop-up, all I do is I just slide that little bead a little bit away from the barb, more towards the bend, so that it hangs over aggressively.
What is important, and you'll also tell the viewers that to measure or to test is to know, Because if I look at the size of the putty on that rig versus the size of the putty on that one, there's a difference. And the reason is because it needs to hold the popper down.
Yes, and the thing is, what you don't want with a pop-up, you don't want a pop-up that actually sinks super, super slowly.
Yeah. You want it to sit on the bottom.
Because now a fish comes past and, you know, they feed laterally. So they're going to go in a single straight line, but your hook is just off center to that. Now his pecs is going to waft it. You want that rig to reset itself immediately. But if it wafts and that thing goes all over the show,
You get foul-hooked fish.
you're going to, first of all, maybe get a foul-hooked fish, or you're going to get a fish that just is scared off from this sudden movement that is going everywhere. So it's critically important to make sure that you overshot your pop-up so that the pop-up sits smack bang on the bottom. And the minute the fish sucks it up, because he needs to, on a pop-up, 90% of the time he doesn't suck it up. He actually puts his mouth over it and he closes his mouth. So you want the overshotted pop-up to actually make sure that that hook is hit home.
So just to recap, and then we're going to move off this, is in terms of principles, firstly, the critically balanced bait.
Yes.
Secondly, the color is important. Thirdly, the way that the hook sits. Fourthly, the anchor that goes down. And fifthly, the stiff boom at the bottom.
Yes.
So you need a stiff boom, a flexible loop.
You need the stiff boom to kick the rig away from your lead, because this is also a further catalyst. Because if your rig is not attached or away from the lead, let's say this was a soft section and it was sitting here, the fish could suck it up, and before you get an indication, would blow it out, and you'd never know that you had a take. But that's going to be kicking away. I want that straight line, because the minute that happens, you're going to have resistance. The fish is going to lift its head
and set
the hook and shake the lead.
Okay, so those are the 5 principles. And of course, I think the loop and boom is by far the most successful type of rig.
It's also, when we talk loops and booms, there are 2 different types of loops and booms. You get a loops and booms with a crank hook, and then you get a loops and booms with a wide gape hook. Now, this packet is my barbless ones that I use at Aqua Paradiso. The wide gape one has got a small piece of shrink tube and a little rig ring to give you that blowback effect, because the way each hook presents itself, you need a different approach. And that's the critical point. And that's why this particular rig is so easy, because you don't need shrink tubing, you don't need a kicker, you need nothing other than a piece of uncoated braid, your boom section that you crimp on both sides, and you literally just thread it through, loop to loop it, putty over, and you've got a rig ready to fish.
Easier to buy off the shelf, but the principle is stiff boom with a flexible loop.
Correct, yes.
Onto a critically balanced bait with a hook that sits up that can move in any way.
And believe me when I say there are so many lazy anglers out there.
I'm one of them.
You really don't need. I mean, I've got.
Yeah.
I bought myself, and you know, this is one other thing. These are my personal rigs.
Yeah.
Which I'm giving to one of you out there.
You are lucky, guys.
I've got so much confidence in the ready-made rigs, and we tried it 2019 and 2020 and 2021. We literally only fished with the ready-mades, and they were absolutely phenomenal.
But it's not, you might call us lazy, but I think in today's day and age, you don't have the time. You need to maximize. You either got to work because you need money to go fish,
Just see what questions there are.
Or you need to go fish, and for that you need time and preparation.
That's it.
And the preparation is just made easier. Okay, we're going to check out questions a little bit later and going to answer them in the second one. But for now, we have to give away. So there's two competitions running. The one is running on the Corda loops and booms, and these that Gilbert has made with all his love. And that one's going to run on Facebook. Then we also have a couple of other very interesting ones by Christen. This is a flexible chart rig. This is a stiff rig incognito, and this is a de-stiff rig. So there are three different types of rigs, and we also have three different packets of hooks, different shapes. Okay, so we're going to give this one on YouTube, that one on Facebook, and here is the question. The first 10 guys who answers correctly, your names will be in the wheel to spin. And let's ask the question. The question is, which rig was the best performing, or is the revolutionary one of the last 4 years of Hier gaan ons alweer shows? What is the name of the rig? Not the brand name of the product, but the type of rig that we used very successfully. Okay, so that's it. Let's get those names in. And then we're going to run straight over to the next section, and we would like to say thank you to Yamaha for making the next one possible. Okay, nou gaan ons bietjie iets anders te gesels, Gilbert. Kom ons kyk gou-gou. Is daar 'n paar interessante vrae?
Ja,
yes, hier's die antwoorde al.
I've got a Wayne Coxon that says, I need to know, how is it possible at times at the bank why I don't get as much as a nibble, but the guy that drops his rig 50 meters from mine gets a bite, and then some. So to answer that very quickly, no bank side is exactly the same. You've got drop-offs, you've got a feature. This guy might be dropping his bait on a sandbank or a sandbar or a little gravel patch, and you are dropping yours,
or a
bloodworm bed. You are dropping yours in the silt or on hard gravel with absolutely nothing around it. So it is unfortunately the name of the game. You know,
how do I sort that out?
You've got to do feature finding. You've got to, if it's at range, go find find out from the angler next to you, what is he fishing to? Is like, for instance, Rudderkoppies Dam, when we did the Hier gaan ons alweer, when we fished those areas 8 to 10 meters of water, we were not looking for the hard gravel. We were looking for the silt pockets next to the gravel. So you would lift your lead and drop your lead and find the soft areas that is not right in the middle of the soft area, but you find donk, soft. That's where you leave it.
Adjacent ones.
Just adjacent to the gravel, because those are the areas that is home for your bloodworm and your snails and all those things. You're not going to find them on hard gravel. You're going to find them where there's something for them to hide from, to eat, and so forth. So that's the areas that we target.
Further to that question, can it be that when you catch fish and I don't, that the way that my rig is constructed, I might have fish there, I might be in the right area, I might even have a pickup but not a hookup?
I've had guys that when we did walkthroughs on, especially at Rudderkoppies Dam, when after we've done a clinic and we've showed the guys, the critically balanced bottom baits, then a guy's using a popper boilie. And that's fine, because we've caught numbers of fish, even last year, during wintertime, in the shallows, on pop-ups. But then you look at the guy's rig, And that rig is not popped up there. It's literally sitting like there because he's got the wrong rig. He's got a soft, uncoated braid. He's got no putty on, or he didn't realize that the split shot that he had on came off. Now that rig is sitting in the air. Now, you might, at some stages, catch fish there, but 90% of the time, they're going to be feeding at the bottom, and you're not going to ever know that there was fish in your area. So that's a possibility. We've had guys at Aqua Paradiso that, and I know he's watching somewhere, but I'm not going to mention names, that put out a better feed, dropped his hook bait, and the next morning there's not a crumb left, but his hook bait is sitting proud.
And the reason is?
The reason is something on that rig is not right. His hook length might be way too long, or it might be way too short, or he had something was stuck. In other words, the piece of putty must have ended up in between two bricks. You know, there's so many things that can happen that can make that rig not work, because the next guy puts that rig almost in the same position, he catches a fish.
Yeah. What about blunt hooks?
Blunt hooks is critical. I mean, you can feel how sharp that hook is.
So when the fish sucks it in and blows it out, it just hooks. If it's a little bit blunt, it will just go right out.
Correct. Now
it will not.
This part of your forefinger, okay, has got a lot of nerve endings.
Yeah, you can feel it.
So what you do is, if you take that and you press that, and it hurts and it draws blood, then that hook is sharp. Never test your hook on your nail.
Why not?
Never do that.
I like
because
if it damages my nail, it means it's
but it
sharp.
also damages the point of your hook.
Okay.
Especially if it is a hand sharpened hook. So what I've done, you see here, I've got a small piece of glass.
Jy sê die goed ruik lekker.
Daai is
insane.
Daar's 'n klein bietjie van die Corda goo op dit.
Oh, okay.
So let me show you quickly a very clever idea on how to sharpen or straighten a bird point. Now, when you work with Kamakura hooks, like these ones here, they are insanely sharp, but the point is fairly soft.
So it can.
Now, guys out there were saying that you can only catch one fish on a Kamakura. On 2020's Hier gaan ons alweer, I had 10 fish on one Kamakura. And the only thing is what I do is, with a hook that's got a sharpened point, whenever you get penetration, the hook point always bends outwards. They don't bend inwards. So they always burn outwards. So all you do is take a good grip on your hook, hold a piece of glass, and slide it along that piece of glass. Just like that.
Does it just straighten it, or does it actually sharpen it?
It straightens it because the hook is already sharp. You don't need to resharpen it.
Oh, so it's just the angle. Just need to get the angle right.
That's it. So that's a clever thing. So let's just see here. I saw another one. How important is feature finding and keeping records of each swim? Is it important to repeat the exercise on regular swims? You don't need to. If it's a regular swim that you always fish, like my good friend Ronnie always fishes swim 6 at Aqua Paradiso. So he doesn't need to do that. All he needs to know is exactly how many wraps is he fishing out. And, you know, if you fish on site, because that water is crystal clear, there's no problem. But Rudderkoppies Dam, the water level resides and it comes up and it resides. So you need to constantly know where those spots are. So if you fish the same spot, make sure that you have GPS coordinates or that you know exactly what you are fishing to. If it is a lake that you know you have some detail on, but you don't know exactly what is underneath. The best thing to do is to take that marker float and pull it through your swim. If you fish out at range, a very clever plan that we're using sometimes, and I sometimes forget the stuff at home, but it's just the bottom end of an old fishing rod and an old fishing reel with 65-pound braid on, or heavier, doesn't matter, but a cold drink can. Just pour some lead in there with a little padlock, and you've got a very, very heavy lead.
Oh, okay. Then you can just.
And then you just prod it, so you can literally feel what is going on the bottom. The nice thing with the cold drink can is it's got a cavity. So if you drop it very fast, it sucks. And then if you just release it very slowly and you bring that up, you can actually feel the silt and you can smell it. Yeah. Because silt
samples it.
Because silt that's got an irony smell is what you call good silt.
Yeah.
It's very soft. It's like sand, but much, much smoother. Your bad silt is that really rotting stuff that is pitch black. It smells. It makes you want to vomit. That is the differential.
Do you know why that is bad salt?
No, you're the chemical engineer, so you can tell me.
Because it's in the process of fermentation and it's rotting. It actually has got a demand for oxygen.
Okay.
So the available oxygen in the area, or the chemical oxygen demand of that, is high, which means that the water in that area is deprived or starved of oxygen because of that fermentation.
And that's why the fish also avoid it.
Because they can't breathe there properly. Because of the fermentation, there's not a lot of oxygen in the water in that area unless there's a flow.
Okay, now for the viewers out there, explain the whole photosynthesis thing with weed. Because in the day, people say, no, but I see all the carp in the weed. It's because it gives off oxygen, but in the evening it actually absorbs oxygen, so the fish will move away from it.
Then give off carbon dioxide. Okay, so we've got time for another one. Then we quickly, I need to ask a question, and that's what I wanted to discuss as well. I wanted tip or three. Just look here.
Sean Stephen McGeer says, do you feed on top of your bait, or would you spread over an area? We have done this now for the past 4 years, where we take our feed, which is a combination of maize, a lot more maize, so let's say 60 or even 70% maize, with the balance being a combination of tiger nuts, hemp, and broken boilies. You mix that all up, make sure that there's no water in your particles, and then you add 10% of coarse salt per volume of bait. So if I have like a 20 kilogram bucket or a 20-liter bucket, I'll put in a kilogram and maybe 1.5 kilograms of coarse salt, and I'll mix it through very thoroughly, and I'll go out to my spot and I'll spread that bait wide. Because what do I want to do? I want the fish to come into the area and not gorge themselves on the bait that is available. I want them to pick this and then pick that, and I want them to become what we call preoccupied. If they are in a feeding frenzy, like what we've achieved at Bloemhof Dam on numerous occasions, you end up hooking the fish all over the show. You get fish in the pecks, you get fish in the mouth, on the side, outside the mouth, and it's because they are vacuuming and they're lifting those rigs up. So I want them to become preoccupied. So if Yanni and Sunny feeds together and I end up catching Sunny, Yanni must turn around and say, where's Sunny now? All right, more for me. That's how I think about it, because that's the concept that I've worked out for myself. And the most important thing is never hook pull a fish right there in your feeding spot, because the vibrations that scared off fish gives off will chase your fish away. Correct. So if you do lose a fish, lose it on the side. Don't lose it in there. So that's why, for me, the most critical part is that I need to have a sharp hook point. And that's where the second part of our revolution came in. Last year, Adrian and myself went to Rurikoppies Dam and we decided we're going to do something completely different. We're not going to fish tiger nuts, we're going to fish popper boilies, and this is where this orange one comes from. And we made a stick mix. The stick mix is literally mainline baits, the different ground baits that we just took one handful of each so that I've got a variety of particles in the floating around. And I added some of the cell liquid, mixed it through, and let it sit there like for 10 minutes or so to absorb. Then I press those sticks.
That's what I wanted to ask. Why is it called a stick mix?
Because once you have compressed it, it's like a little stick. Now, because there's no water in that mix, the water is going to absorb into that mix very quickly and break it down for you. So all I want is that hook bait to sit proud outside that. So I've got two benefits. I've got an area where I can put extra attraction because now I've got that coarse salt in the water. Now the coarse salt does nothing other than change the pH of the pH value of the water in that area. Now I've got a super sweet hook bait that sits right there in the middle. It stands out like a sore thumb. It's got
to be different.
It's got to be completely different. So the coarse salt is one of the main catalysts. The fact that we spread the bait wide, so I can never overfeed. And then when I go and drop my bait, I literally just have one handful over that hook bait. And we had it, remember you and I went out on the boat in 2020, and I said to you, look on this echo sounder, you could literally see the fish diving down.
Yeah.
And you would put the bait down. Petri was standing on the bank, and we were dropping a line for him. And you said to him, Petri, check your stock, jy gaan nou 'n bait kry.
Yeah.
We left it, put a handful, moved to the side, and we were halfway back, and Petri was standing, and you said, what is wrong? No, fish on. So
immediately.
That is literally how effective this can be.
Okay, so in terms of that, we've actually answered a question or two. Hansie asked, met visse wat julle met hier gaan ons sal weer vang, well done by the way, hoe benader julle die voerplek en hoe hou julle die visse in die area? En dis wat jy nou net gesê het, sprei hom wyd, en elke keer as jy die aas gaan neersit, dan mousetrap jy hom.
Die ander ding wat ek net daar kan bysit is, ons het in die middernag het ons gaan voer.
Die groter voer.
Omdat die aktiwiteit van die buite wat ons gekry het was hoofsaaklik deur die dag, het ons besluit, as jy daai voer wyd gaan sprei, middernag, is daar 5 ure voordat ons koffie drink en gou die lyne gaan drop. En dit was letterlik 10 minute daarna, nadat jy die lyne gedrop het, dan begin jy vis vang.
Dan het jy nou kans gehad om hulle in te trek en so.
Dis reg. Dan is hulle wat ons noem preoccupied.
So Hansie, dis die antwoord is daai gereelde voer sonder om dit te veel te doen wanneer jy actually besig is om te hengel. En dit nie noodwendig op een hoop te gaan gooi nie, maar dit wyd te sprei.
Shane Briel sê hy wag nog vir sy prys op die laaste keer wat hy gewen het.
Daai Shane gaan ons opvat, want dit moenie gebeur nie. JKJ Express is ongelooflik betroubaar. So ons gaan kyk wat daar aangaan. Jessica, het jy hom? Shane Briel vorige prys.
Ryan Foster is asking, is there any reason why you use PVA mesh and not PVA solid bags? I use PVA solid bags, but only in shallow water.
Why?
Because the PVA bag dissolves really, really quickly. And a solid bag, you normally fish on gravel or where there's pieces of weed and you want that lead to go bangs right down onto the bottom where it dissolves and you've got a really, really short hook link. When you fish deep water, by the time your rig hits the bottom, that bag is dissolved already, and you don't necessarily want to fish a short hook link. You want to fish something a little bit longer.
Good.
Wayne Coxon says, thank you very much for the answer.
Okay, ons moet iets weggee.
Sean Stephen McGeer says, remember I showed you the echo sounder?
Yes.
So
The one that's going to be in the article.
So you guys can go onto 4Anglers in a couple of weeks' time. Werner will actually just announce that. But
end of January, it will be in the Bank Angler as well as on 4Anglers. There's a nice article with a couple of bonus pictures that we just put together that Gilbert wrote for us. And there's an interesting thing about it. You can actually see the picture of the echo.
Yeah, and the main thing is. Obviously, the echo sounder that I use is the Lowrance Elite 9 TI2. So it gives me a lot more information. There's now a newer model out, which is even more amazing. But the long and short is, an echo sounder for me is, I use that for finding the structure and finding it accurately, because I need to know when I look at the screen, I need to know what is hard, what is soft, and is there possible snag. So I use that in conjunction with my sonar and my down scan. The down scan, I don't normally use the side scan. Yes, if I see a tree, I want to see in which angle does it sit or whatever. But the down scan and the sonar is what I normally use. The sonar is a little bit more effective on certain things, but the down scan is absolutely amazing to pinpoint certain areas.
Okay, we now need to give away some stuff because we are running out of time. Ons praat so lekker, dit is heerlik en ek leer so baie weer vandag. Okay, in die stuyvelyne, we have done the article about the Hier gaan ons alweer trip, the nice one that was up to the Kuneni. And because we are giving away a nice stuyvelyne shirt, I must show it to that camera. In the article about the Kuneni River, I've got a nice stuyvelyne jacket on and a big spotted gully, almost as tall as me. So according to the table that was calculated a certain weight, I want to know what that weight was. It was in the caption of that photo where I've got the tight lines, the paddle on. Now, remember, you can also go to 4Anglers, go to the shop, and you can go and order your tight lines, bank angler, shirt, jacket, everything with your name on if you want to. Okay, so dis die vraag. 10 manne van of nee, nou sê dis mos nou nie reg deesdae. Ek kan ons nie sê manne nie, want daar's
baie manne ook.
Vroue en manne hier. So 10 mense van YouTube en 10 uit die Bank Angler Facebook bladsy se name gaan in die hoed. Almal wat die eerste 10 regte antwoorde het vir daardie. Nou ja, dan sê ek baie dankie vir Kingfisher wat vir ons die volgende insetsel moontlik gemaak het. Okay, Gilbert, ons het nou baie tyd gevat bietjie op al hierdie goed, maar dit is nou baie lekker interessant. But let's quickly talk about syndicate waters. And syndicate always sounds so negative to me. Because it sounds like a group of people that wants to keep others out. But what it is actually, it's just, I like to use the term as managed waters or well-managed waters. So what do you see, why are syndicate waters important?
Well, in the UK, for argument's sake, that literally saved the fishing industry. Because if you don't have a protected area where the fish are looked after, returned, where nuisance species are managed, removed from time to time, and other species introduced to aid the ecosystem, you end up with a dead piece of water. And we all know that what's happening in South Africa, if there's an open piece of water, it gets netted, and before you know it, there's nothing left of it.
And it doesn't matter what size of fish they all get.
Everything goes, and we're talking about, if I look at Aqua Paradiso, we've introduced your koi. They are thriving in there.
Yes,
They're growing.
I've seen some of them are like
double the size.
Yeah, 5-6 kilos.
We introduced 117 megacarp from megacarp in Mulder's Drift. Those fish, some of them are gaining up to 1 kilogram a month. There's fish in there that's touching on 20 kilos by now. And this is not the original strain fish. There's some that's even bigger than that. But because of all the snags, some of them never even venture out of those areas, because why should they?
Yeah, there's enough food, there's enough protection.
But in general, there's, I was part of the very first syndicate that was ever established here in South Africa. And it's not to keep people out, it's to preserve an area. And
the resource in
we allow people in all the time at Aqua Paradiso, but you have to conform to certain rules and regulations. If you're a hooligan, sorry, you're not going to become part of the syndicate.
What are the most important type of rules that are enforced at a syndicate type water?
You've got to be sensible as to whether there's syndicates that only allow braided line, and there's syndicates that don't allow it at all. Now, let's look at the syndicates that only allow braided line. The reason for that will obviously be the presence of crabs, because some waters have incredible amounts of crab. Now, crab is good for carp because carp loves smashing them into pieces and sucking up the juices, because it is it's good for them. Then, if you've got waters where you've got incredible amounts of weed, plus the presence of crabs, so you don't want to be snipped off all the time. Aqua Paradiso is a water that is crystal clear, so there's very few crabs, but your biggest problem is the timber. Now, that braid cuts into that timber and you cannot get it out. So that's why we say we prefer if guys use thicker than 15 pound breaking strain line, although 15 is the bare minimum, but then you have to use a 15 meter of 0.50 or 0.55 fluorocarbon leader to prevent that fish from cutting into cutting the line into the timber. But yeah, people think it's moonshine and roses, but it is extremely hard work, because the amount of trees that we have pulled out of Aqua, thanks to Alan and his team of divers, and you with your contraption that works like an absolute bomb. But every single cent that we make in Aqua Paradiso goes back into the venue, because luckily we've got earth-moving equipment to our disposal, so we've got to make sure that those things are...
So the management is important, and we've touched on some of the rules. You've also got a rule at Aqua about hooks.
Yes.
What is that?
You have to flatten the barb on the hooks at Aqua, or you have to use a barbless hook. And the reason for that, if you are snagged up by a fish, you need that. I want that fish to come off with the least amount of damage to its mouth. If you've got a barbed hook, that fish is going to be hung in that tree for maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, maybe forever. Now, that we want to avoid at all costs. So a barbless hook, and you fish barbless hooks on the Vaal in any case. So,
what about rules around what you are allowed to feed or not feed? Why is that important?
What we need to consider, and that we touched on earlier on, yes, tiger nuts do work. Tiger nuts catches fish everywhere, but tiger nuts are not nutritious enough to sustain a fish at all. So you need a combination of maize. You need proteins such as boilies, pellets. and you can use hemp because the hemp oil is also nutritious to a degree, although they don't get in a hell of a lot of that. But there's also a fair amount of fiber. Now, a carp is like a human being. You can't just live on one thing because you're going to either become extremely unhealthy or extremely thin, and that neither of them is good. So you want the fish to be optimized by way of a nutritional balanced diet. If you're going to be allowing peanuts in the water, now peanuts is devastating. It is incredibly good for catching carp. But if it's prepared incorrectly, you can kill the fish that eats that because of that enzyme in the peanut. So we don't allow peanuts. We allow small amounts of tiger nuts. So if you go for a session at Aqua, you can take with you a kilogram of tiger nuts. But you can take as much maize as you like because the carp love it, the bass even eat it from time to time, and the catfish loves it. So nothing goes to waste.
Okay. Well, that's it. If you want to get more information about syndicates or Aqua, you can always contact Gilbert with no problem. So let us give away the prizes. So last thing to say, thank you to Sensation Tackle that also made it possible for us to do this. Okay, so Jonathan and Jessica prepared the wheels, everybody that had in. So which one is the one that we do first? Is that a YouTube or a... We're going to do the first one, the first question. The first question was, which revolutionary rig over the last 4 years performed the best? And we are going to YouTube first for the Christen hamper. So is that the YouTube, guys? Okay, let's spin.
Johan Matthijssen.
Jy sal jou pakkie kry met die komplimente van JKJ Express Couriers. Baie dankie Neville Rieker en jou span wat altyd seker maak alles word afgelewer. Goed, die volgende ene kom van Facebook af en dit is Jessie. Moet ons al 4 daai weggee? Kan ek hulle nie maar vir jou gaan toets nie? Yes,
Jy het al
lyk mooi. Okay, so kom ons spin hom vir die Cordal rigs en die handgemaakte rigs van Gilbert.
Wel gedaan, Freddy.
Freddy, baie geluk. Jou pakkie sal afgelewer word deur JKJ Express. Nou gee ons weg. Okay, nou gee ons weg 'n stywelyne hemp. En ons gee weg 'n buff. Nou jy kan ook dit gaan koop. Al ons verskillende brands kan jy gaan koop op For Anglers. Jy kan daar gaan kyk onder More en Shop. En jy kan dit selfs gaan bestel met jou naam op. So, ons het op 'n stadium, Gilbert het ons 'n paar mooi hemde van jou weggegee met jou baie mooi wêreldkampioenskap, jou wêreldkampioenskap hemde. Okay, so ons sal weer een of ander tyd so iets doen. Miskien sal ons Gilbert se arm draai vir nog 'n personalized something. Ons het baie interessante klere gedra hierdie afgelope hier gaan ons alweer reeks. Ek het nogals gehou van julle Daiwa hoodie.
Ja, daai Daiwa hoodies het ongelooflike aftrek gekry en die nice ding dit is hulle noem dit die climate control.
Hy's warm in die
en wat vir my amazing was selfs daar by Henties waar dit warm was die een slag, dan voel jy lekker cool.
Ja.
Maar as daai koue wind waai, dan is dit asof dit net help dat jy nie koud kry nie. So ek is baie mal daaroor.
Ek dra myne nogals lekker baie. Okay, maar hierdie is ook daardie lekker materiaal. Goed. Is ons gereed? Amper. Kom ons gee vir Jonathan 'n kansie. Hy laaste klompie wat ingekom het. Is daar nog 'n vraag om te antwoord?
Kyk, ja, die ouens is slim.
Hulle weet van alles. Een vraagie wat ons nie by uitgekom het nie, wat ek gevra het, is as jy moet so 2 of 3 punt plan vir my gee vir hoe hengel ek hierdie tyd van die jaar wat al die damme so baie water gekry het. Alles is oorlopends te vol. Daar's nie 'n dam in die area wat nie 100 of 105 of 111 en allerlei sulke lawwe getalle is nie. Wat is die beste raad om dit te doen?
Nommer 1, bly weg van die rivier af. Okay, so kom ons kyk na 'n dam soos Rodekoppiesdam. Wat gaan die vis doen die oomblik as die water vol is? Hulle gaan daai plantmateriale opsoek wat nou net 'n week gelede onder water geraak het en hulle gaan daar rondskarrel. So wat ons altyd gedoen het is om daai area te kry net waar dit ophou.
Die graslyn.
Dan vat jy daai graslyn en jy voer 'n bietjie voer in die gras en die meerderheid buite. So jy lok hulle letterlik, hier kry hulle nou iets en dan gaan hulle volg die paadjie uit.
Vang jy hulle buitekant die gras.
Dan vang jy hulle buitekant die gras. Dit het op 'n verskeidenheid van venues gewerk. Dit het vir ons by 'n wêreldkampioenskap ook gewerk, wat ons letterlik die vis in die margins gevang het, net ander kan die gras.
Wow. Okay. Eerste stywerlyne hemp met 'n stywerlyne buff. Alles een. Okay, so ons gaan alles is bymekaar gegooi en ons gaan 2 keer trek en ons gaan 2 van hulle weggooi. So kom ons trek die eerste een.
Jacques de Pre.
Baie geluk, Jacques. Daar's hy. Dit is joune. Jy moet net seker maak Jessica het jou kontakbesonderhede, want jy moet 'n grootte gee vir jou hemp en jy moet 'n adres gee. Goed, hy is uit die mix uit. Ons spin nog 'n keer.
Rachel Zili.
As hy Rachel, jy het vir jou ook 'n hemp en 'n buff gewen. Baie geluk. Die laaste prys wat ons weggee. Net so by the way. Die 2 vrae wat ons gevra het se antwoorde was as volg. Wat was die mees suksesvolle riek? Dit was die loop and booms. En wat was daai spotted gully shark? Dit was 'n persoonlike beste vir my. Volgens die tabel was hy net meer as 35 kg. So, dis die antwoorde. Nou hierdie is eksklusief vir ons lede. This is only for our For Anglers members that supports us by reading all 4,000 articles that we have on the site and watching all the videos. So vir die 200 en hoeveel wat in die laaste week gerenew het, julle name is in daai wiel. Julle kan glo dit is daar, daai gedeelte agter die wit het eintlik nog baie meer name in, maar jy kan net soveel sien daar. Dis hoekom hy so wit deel daai het en ons gaan hom spin vir daardie pragtige bullseye 10 voet stok van wat deur is 'n Poseidon stok wat deur Kingfisher vir ons geskenk het.
Net byvoeg met die toetsfase het ons probeer om daai stok met 'n 5 ons sinker te gooi. En hy gooi net al hoe lekker.
Ja, hy het nogal backbone, né?
Ja.
Hy het nogal
Peer Miller. Baie geluk.
Baie geluk Peer, jy is 'n For Anglers lid, so ons het al jou detail, ons sal jou kontak en ons sal vir jou prys stuur met die komplimente van JKJ Express. Nou die laaste, maar nie die minste nie, kyk na ons wieleborg. Hulle maak ook die program moontlik en hierdie is een van die oulikste advertensies wat ek in 'n lang tyd gesien het. Behalwe die ander ene wat op hier gaan ons alweer was, is hierdie absoluut my favorite.
Wow!
Ja, gelukkig gaan my kar se wiele nie uitval nie. Ek moet vir julle sê,
As hy nie by die konene uitgeval
Dis
het
wat
nie,
ek
gaan
net
hy
wil sê.
nêrens uitval
as hy
nie.
nie daar uitval nie. Daai paaie, Gilbert, as jy eers daar is in die sand en so aan, is dit okay, maar daai paaie soontoe, as jy ooit opgaan, kan jy nie toe. Maak seker jou voertuig is behoorlik versien. Jy kan nie daar gaan staan nie.
Dit is hoekom hulle gesê het, jy moet die off-road suspensions hê en jy moet jou wiele moet die regte banddruk wees en al daai goed.
Of gaan net saam met hulle en hulle voertuie, jy kry 'n selfry of 'n saamry opsie.
Ja, sy.
En dis regtig maar belangrik dat jou voertuig in 'n goeie toestand is. Maar ja, danksy Gilbert Motors was ons met goeie gehalte voertuie daar. Toyota het regtig sy werk gedoen en dit was 'n fees. Nou ja, baie dankie Gilbert Motors, Brian Audio Visual, die sponsors wat vir ons hierdie verskillende seksies moontlik gemaak het en Gilbert, nou, dit lyk vir my jy's nou besig om hierdie oudjies bymekaar te maak. Jy gaan nou al een vir elke een in jou gesin kan jy nou al 'n geskenk gee.
Die seuns het klaar die ander twee geannexeer.
Nou jy ook een.
Nou het ek ook een.
Baie dankie Gilbert, dankie dat julle gekyk het. Sien julle volgende week Dinsdag aand 7:00, selfde tyd, selfde plek.